Matthew Lee, Inner City Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks a lot for the briefing. It's a good report, and I'm sorry, but I have to ask about something very specific in it. I noticed in your catalog of complaints and communications on page 113, you have your letter to Cristina Gallach of the Department of Public Information here about her decision to throw Inner City Press out of the UN for covering a meeting in this very room. And so I wanted to know, I've seen her response now, May 25th, where she said that I trespassed in this room covering a meeting of the UN Correspondents Association, which I believe was relevant to the Anglap saying bribery scandal we wanted to cover. So I wanted to know, what did you, she doesn't mention in there that I've had a minder ever since. For anything on the second floor can only be covered with a minder signed by DPI who asks, who do you want to speak to? So I wanted to know, what did you think of her response? What do you think of the restrictions, of 8 months of such restrictions for seeking to cover a meeting in this room? And what does it take to have the UN live up to the principles that you put forward in your opening statement?
Yeah, so thanks, Matthew. I'd say a couple of things, and I want to start with the last part of your question, which is looking at how the UN lives up to the standards in international human rights law. So we've actually initiated a project, and I should say, when I did the whistleblower protection report last year, we devoted a page or so to whistleblower protection in the UN system. When it comes to access to information, which is your access as journalists, but also the public's access to UN information, generally speaking, we're at the beginning of our study, but generally speaking, I think that the rules around access to information, the rules around journalist access, and maybe not just in headquarters, but throughout the UN ecosystem, are really opaque. It's not clear, I think, to the average person how to get access to information from the UN or from other international organizations. And I think that that relates as well to journalists. And it may be easier in the context of headquarters where you have a system set up and you have so much news taking place in this building. But the UN is far flung and it's unclear how one gets information across the board. As far as the specifics, I'm not sure I can characterize my reaction to them, but I would say that it would be useful for me as a rapporteur and someone who's interested in access to information to know a little bit more about process. So, what is the process by which someone is accredited or, and I know it's not strictly speaking accreditation, but what is the process for accreditation and for the taking away of accreditation? And I think that's something I'd like to explore more with her and with DPI. But it's not just this building's issue. It's something across the board.
Just for your own information, between trying to cover a meeting here on January 29th and being evicted on February 19th, I was never spoken to once. There was absolutely zero due process. So if you make this inquiry, I would encourage you to that could solve a lot of it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes. Ask is, in this room before the Wonder Woman situation, unrelated to it, or maybe related, David Kaye, the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression, who in his report has included a letter from Cristina Gallach responding to his inquiry about her decision to throw a media out for being in the room, her letter says that the press trespassed in this room. So I wanted to know, what he raised concerns about due process. Given that you've worked in that system, what do you learn from the inquiry from David Kaye and Michel Forst asking about it, and the comments made today about the UN not
I mean, I think
living up to
it's
its own
about
principles?
you, and I think your case has been
Well,
adjudicated.
it's a UN report that came